Your dreams are bigger, bolder, and more badass than the life you're living now, but something just keeps getting in the way. Join certified coach and former therapist Diane Wingert for the Driven Woman podcast. She'll show you how to get rid of whatever is holding you back so you can stop spinning your wheels and up-level your life. Get ready to hop in and buckle up. This is the Driven Woman podcast, and we're heading for the fast lane.
It's season 2. Thanks for staying with me through all of season 1. And if you're just joining me now, you've got some binge listening of the Driven Woman podcast to catch up on. Luckily, each episode has been under 15 minutes, so you should be able to knock that out real quickly. Here we are at the beginning of season 2, and I have an episode for you this week that is probably going to surprise you. The title is How to Do Boring Stuff. I know. It probably seems like, what the hell? Why did you hype this season 2 and now you're going to tell us how to do boring stuff? We don't want to do boring stuff. But here's the thing. Stay with me. Everybody has to do boring stuff sometimes. As a matter of fact, one of the reasons I believe why so many female entrepreneurs don't last in self-employment. I know it's a painful topic and touchy too, but it's true. The reason why many female entrepreneurs don't last is because what's called the monotony of success. Oh, when I first heard that, I thought, no, don't tell me that. I've been looking forward to freedom and flexibility and more fun and setting my own hours and charging what I'm worth and all that good stuff about being self-employed. I don't want to hear about the monotony of success. But if you have been working for yourself for longer than a minute, you know that some of the job is boring and you can't give it all to your VA. So I do think this is an important topic, and if any of you or many of you have ADHD like I do, you need this, and you know it. So before we get into the meat and potatoes, as promised, I'd like to share with you another of what I call my pod praise, and that is a podcast review from one of my audience. This one is from E.R. Rooney, who says, "So helpful. I have listened to a few of these podcasts, and Diane explains many complex concepts with simple analogies. I have already had a handful of light bulb moments to help me decipher what's going on in this head of mine. Helpful tips make this podcast useful and bite-sized, and the shows are easy to grasp. I've already shared one of the episodes with a few of my male colleagues. Haha! Thanks, Diane. I got such a giggle out of that. E.R. Rooney, thank you so much. And you can share the Driven Woman with men. As a matter of fact, I suspect there may be others. And if you are a man and you listen regularly to the Driven Woman podcast, you absolutely have to leave me a review or a message on the SpeakPipe widget on my website. Even though this is a female-oriented podcast, I love men. They're awesome. And if this podcast speaks to you and you're a dude, rock on your bad self and raise your hand and let me know you're out there. And if you have to do boring stuff and really struggle to make yourself do it, then you've got to hear what I have to say next. I bring you how to do boring stuff. For many, many years, it was a source of guilt, shame, and regret that I could just never quite get myself to do stuff simply because it was deemed important. The funny thing is that it didn't even matter if it was deemed important by someone else or by me. If I wasn't feeling it, I just didn't want to do it. So, unfortunately, procrastination became the norm for many important things. The biggest one, which I have hated and dreaded for decades, is doing my freaking taxes. I believe there is a special place in hell for whoever in the government is responsible for creating tax forms, and especially the instructions, which I call destructions. In fact, I call almost all forms of written guidance destructions, not instructions, especially the stuff from IKEA. Oof. They almost always serve no purpose other than to confuse me, and most days I feel confused enough as it is. So let's just skip the tax talk for now. I mean, after all, does anyone actually enjoy doing them? If you do, you can stop listening right now. Just get out your phone, take your picture, submit it to Wikipedia under the heading of superhuman. You deserve it. For everyone else, keep listening. You are my people. No offense to Ms. Superhuman, okay? So let's dial it down from the annual big shit show of procrastination called tax time and settle on something, let's say a bit more mundane and frequent, like ironing. Now, ironing is actually important, at least if you are one of those people who either has to or chooses to wear clothes that make you look a little bit less like a homeless person if you don't iron them. Now that we are all these months into the pandemic, I think everybody is probably wearing t-shirts and sweats, but maybe on those Zoom calls you might have a starched shirt, maybe even a tie or a scarf, earrings. If that's your life, you can only put it off for so long. The ironing, I mean, before you're in serious trouble. Now, you skip the ironing at your own peril or face the consequences, like getting up at 5 to iron that work blouse for your Zoom call with your boss, or face disapproving looks from others when you show up wrinkly and rumpled. Now, I do happen to know that there are some people who enjoy ironing. They say they find it relaxing, kind of like a moving meditation, and that it gives them peace of mind and a sense of accomplishment. I salute you. Now, this may not be at the level of Ms. Superhuman with her "I love doing my taxes" t-shirt, but they're not the majority either. Most of us fall somewhere on the ironing scale between "can't I just do it tomorrow indefinitely?" and "I'd rather poke out my own eye than do the ironing." I hate to admit it, but I'm actually closer to door number 2. Personally, I really hate ironing. Not only is it utterly boring, when you suck at it like I do, it's very time-consuming. I can slave away over a hide iron for 20 minutes and still have the item look like I just scooped it out of the bottom of the hamper. Sigh. Anyway, when you have something boring but important to do and you are procrastinating on it, you have alternatives. In fact, you can use these alternatives anytime. You just need to fire up your motivation to get shit done. And by telling yourself how important that thing is, or having your partner lecturing you about it and finger wagging, just try any or all of these tips and watch yourself spring into action like a 15-year-old with a shiny new work permit. Here we go. Number 1, make it more interesting. One of the main reasons you resist doing the thing is because you find it boring. Now, this episode is called How to Do Boring Stuff, so that's why we're here. Now, this is going to be the case with most things in life after you've done them a few 100,000 times, and you just have to keep doing them. Some people love to cook. I don't like doing things that don't stay done. And that applies to the housework and most of the pet care and the shopping, and you get the point. But do you remember when you were a kid and you had a child's sense of curiosity and wonder about the smallest of things? Kids can be easy to motivate to do a chore when you show them a way to make it fascinating. Well, I have news for you, my friend. You are just a great big kid. So why not treat yourself like one when you need to do a boring but important task? Can you make doing ironing fascinating? Well, it depends on what you're more interested in and curious about. Would spending 5 minutes researching who invented the iron or the ironing board do the trick? How about looking on YouTube for ironing videos and see if you can pick up some hints for how to make the job better or faster? After watching for a couple of minutes, I just bet you'll be willing to try them out. Option number 2, make it more challenging. There's really nothing quite like a challenge to get some people off their butt and into action. Sometimes it's the very best way to stir up your love of being challenged by increasing a sense of competition. Now, that can be competition with another person or even with yourself. I've created lots of challenges for myself by making a series of check boxes for each day of the month. When I have a daily task that I tend to procrastinate on or avoid, I go to my check boxes. And once I have done 2 days and I see those little boxes starting to add up, I just want to keep going and checking off the boxes. Now, I know this might sound silly, but it's that don't break the chain reward system that all the productivity gurus recommend. When I first started writing my blog, and I knew I was going to have to produce a blog post every week, I actually made myself start writing every day. Every day. Why? Because I knew I needed to build the skill and habit, but I also needed to break down decades of resistance and even avoidance when it comes to writing. So I used the checkbox system. It triggered my own sense of being challenged and competing with myself to keep on going. Now, if that won't work for you because you need more accountability, then enlist a friend, a coworker, a spouse. Someone who won't want to lose makes a difference, because if they slack off, you don't really have the same sense of competition. And by the way, you absolutely need to have built in a very nice reward within limits for sticking with it. Option number 3, make it shiny, make it novel, make it new, make it fresh, make it different. We are all likely to ignore, procrastinate on, resist, and yes, avoid things that we've done a million times. That's why they're boring. But even the ones that once upon a time were enjoyable to us, they've become mundane and tedious simply because of repetition. The human brain loves novelty and tends to tune out the familiar. So to tap into the novelty and fire up your desire and motivation to do important but boring tasks that are no longer shiny, you gotta find a way to make it fresh again. Now, this might involve some out-of-the-box thinking, creative problem solving. You might even have to do something barely legal. I just had the thought, I wonder if you could do your ironing in the nude when your laundry room is directly facing that of your neighbors. I bet that would get you to do it quick as a bunny. Or you could try imagining that you're an alien who has to figure out the ironing, even though you're brand new to the planet, or that you are teaching the skill to a young child or someone that doesn't speak your language. You could try ironing with your non-dominant hand. That's the one you don't usually use for such tasks. That will slow you down, but I promise it will also engage you by simply changing the way the task feels. Shiny? Oh yeah. Another option, and my personal favorite of the bunch, is changing the location and the view. My ironing board is typically in the laundry room. There is a window, but it's up high and the walls are bare, and even the environment, in addition to the actual ironing, is boring visually. But how would I feel if I took the ironing board to the balcony and ironed away while feeling the breeze and noticing the trees nearby? Shiny indeed. Or option number 4, make it time sensitive, urgent. Last but not least, because most of us do rely on urgency for the things we put off, and when we're staring down a deadline, it really does bring procrastination to its knees. But this is the default when that's the only thing we know. And when we put off everything to the last possible minute just because it's boring, sooner or later, there will be consequences. Hey, we all have a personal set point for the level of pain we're willing to face by putting things off. Once we reach the furthest extent of how long we can get away with procrastination or avoidance, we will take action. It's not exactly that we feel more motivated. The task is still boring after all, and we still don't want to do it, but we've run out of time, and we simply aren't willing to deal with what will happen to us if we don't just do it. So, hey, you don't need me to lecture you on using a time crunch to get yourself to act when you really are running out of time. You already know how to do that and have no doubt done it countless times, just like I have. What I'm talking about now is creating a sense of urgency when there really isn't a built-in drop-dead deadline. You manufacture one and then hold yourself to it. Now, this one's a little tricky because since you made it up, you'll know that you made it up, kind of like setting your watch 5 minutes ahead when you know you're the one who did it. It doesn't really work for a lot of us. You probably will need some accountability, and that means asking someone else to help you. You will also want to create and honor both a reward for success and a consequence for failure. Because just like in the real world, whether we're talking about public education or the workplace, motivating human behavior involves giving us something we want, acknowledgement, when we do what's asked of us, and giving us something we don't want, at least a verbal warning, when we fail to. We just want to help our brains be prepared for the real world and the fact that there are rewards and consequences. Now, people are different in how they respond to these motivators, so you may want to experiment with them and see what works best. Even though you will always have tasks in your life and in your business that are important but boring, knowing that you have at least a couple of handy ways to get yourself to act on them anyway, I'm hoping will spare you a lot of the negative self-talk, stress, and aggravation. Now, don't you have a pile of ironing lying around somewhere? Hey, I hope you're enjoying listening to the Driven Woman podcast and looking forward to each new episode every Tuesday. Are you ready to take our relationship to the next level? Visit my website at dianewingertcoaching.com. I have a weekly blog. There's a quiz you can take to find out what your ADHD signature strength is, and some other freebies like the 6 Steps to ADHD Mastery or the Driven Woman Roadmap Fast Track to Success. And if you're ready to get serious about going from spinning to winning and taking yourself from driven but distracted to focused, fired up, and flame retardant, you should definitely sign up for a free consultation. We'll spend 30 minutes talking about where you are, where you want to be, and whatever's getting in the way. I won't try to sell you if you're not right for coaching, and I'm not the right one for you. But if you are, this might be the best way to make 2021 your best year ever. Want to hear from someone who's actually worked with me? Have a listen to my client, Rachel.
I didn't have you helping me along the way to understand a lot of this stuff, the meds would have been a waste for me, a complete and total waste. I would have had a little bit more energy maybe but still the habits, whatever. There's no magic pill. It's always going to be something I'm going to have to work on. And I am understanding that and being okay with that and just kind of working through that and thinking and being intentional and stopping myself and doing all of the things for the first time in my life. I'm going to tell you right now, the meds have allowed me to slow stuff down enough that I've never been this effective at anything cognitive ever in my life. But I've also never had it explained to me by somebody who understands what's going on in my head either.
You've been listening to the Driven Woman podcast with Diane Wingert. Want more straight talk and strategy each week that will take you from spinning to winning? Don't forget to hit subscribe in your podcast player so you won't miss a single episode. Then head on over to the Driven Woman free and private Facebook group community. See you there.